Good day, and thank you for joining us on yet another episode of Geo Musings with Mansour. Today, we are going to be discussing one of the very important reasons why Iran was able to blind, like I said earlier, the radar eyes of the United States of America, so-called the eventual fantastic performance in this war. And as a result, the topic of our discourse this morning will be Iran versus America, the sat-nav battle. I will repeat myself. Iran versus America, the sat-nav battle. Now, what do we mean by sat-nav? What we mean by sat-nav is satellite navigation. Sat-nav means satellite navigation. What is satellite navigation? Satellite navigation is essentially your Google, what do you call it? Your Google Maps, It is satellite navigation that helps your Google map to work. You key in a location, and it starts sending you around, turn right, turn left, go to this distance, go, drive this distance like that. It is satellite navigation that helps you to be able to do that. Now, you use it domestically to drive around, to move around. But for folks who are fighting, for countries at the governmental level who are prosecuting wars, satellite navigation is extremely critical to them. Don't forget that I told you that it is radar, the radar on the ground, the ones Iran destroyed, that connect to satellites in space, that now connect back to radars that are farther ahead. That is why satellite navigation is important. In the world, there are only three major, consequential satellite navigation empowered countries: the United States of America, China, and Russia. The United States of America owns and runs what we call GPS, Global Positioning. I've forgotten the S, I'm sorry. While China runs what we call Beidou. Beidou is what China runs. While Russia runs what we call GLONASS. GLONASS. I'm sure you are conversant with GPS, but you probably may not have heard Beidou or GLONASS before. For the purpose of this war, for the purpose of the Iran versus America war, the battle has been largely, at least publicly, that's spilled into open source media. I'm not saying the Russians have not contributed spectacularly. I'm sure they have. But their contributions have not been at the level of the public. Now, for the purpose of this war, the two sat-nav systems that fielded, that battled for the soul of this war were GPS on the side of America and its allies, and Beidou on the side of China. Now, what are the differentials? What are the differences between the two? GPS is much older. It's much more legacy. It's what has been around for a long time. In fact, the Iranian weapon systems, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, drones, and whatever you call them, had always been using GPS because there was nothing else. Beidou is a much more recent entrant. However, Beidou may not have may be younger and may be less used, less ramified, and less proliferated compared to GPS. However, Beidou has shown by far more technical acumen compared to GPS. Beidou, for example, is more accurate than GPS. GPS will give you accuracy to the last 50 meters, while Beidou will give you accuracy to the last 5 meters. That is one important difference. The second important difference is that GPS images from space usually come black and white, blurry. The blurry of X-rays. Are you conversant with X-rays? Some of our doctors, some of our friends, maybe who have had issues, will know how X-rays can be a bit difficult. The average layman cannot read X-rays. You have to depend on your doctor or your orthopedic surgeon to read your X-rays. So GPS tends to give, X-ray-like images, black and white. You really may not be able to differentiate things. You may need examples. But Beidou came to the fore particularly in the lead up to this Iran-America war. Beidou's images fantastic, colored, clear resolution. In fact, when you look at Beidou images, if you are conversant with the different weapon systems of the United States of America, you will be able to differentiate a B-2 from a B-52, a B-52 from a B-21, an F-22 from an F-35, from an F-16 and other fighter jets, Chinooks, Apaches and all sorts. You will be able to differentiate in those bases as packed. And then, very importantly, there's also a software that also contributed to these sightings. We call it Flight Radar. With Flight Radar, pundits, analysts, OSINT guys can actually track where those ships and where those fighter jets and planes take off from, where they keyed in the transponder that they are going, the flight path, the distance, the length, the duration of the flight, and when they eventually landed. So Beidou showed clearly greater, much better technical acumen compared to GPS. Shortly before this current war started, the war that started last Saturday, apparently Iran moved a lot, virtually all of its systems to Beidou. Then Beidou also helped before the war started, helped Iran. How did they help Iran? In real time, live, they helped track American military gear movement from Europe, from continental US itself, down to the Middle East across its entire bases. Now, America also did not help. They were putting on their transponders. Don't forget that one of the main goals of Trump was to actually intimidate Iran to even surrendering before the war started. Why? And that was why America did not put off the transponders and move their military gear into the Middle East secretly. Instead, they did it publicly. That publicity was to intimidate Iran. Unfortunately, the Iranians were not intimidated and were not cowed. In fact, Trump complained publicly, and Steve Witkoff, his chief negotiator, also complained in line that why are the Iranians not budging? Why are they not scared of all the 400, 500 fighter jets and other aerial gear we brought in, of all the aircraft carriers, number 1, number 2, number 3 we are bringing in, of all the military bombs, everything we brought in? Why are they not scared? They were not scared. Now what happened eventually? The Chinese with their Beidou helped us to see everything. If people like me, an ordinary guy in his local environment, can see, imagine what the Iranians would see. The Chinese were publishing live movements of American military gear on their social media, translating into English. The Chinese company that was particularly doing that is called Mizar Vision, while the American company that is in charge of their own version of GPS is called Planet Labs. Now, when the war started, what do you think would happen? Iran knew where everything was. They knew where everything took off from Europe and America. They knew where everything landed. They knew where to look out for. They knew the GPS coordinates. When they took stuff down, when they took stuff out, they saw in real time the instantaneous effect it had. Have we taken it out? Was it still existing? What more do we need? So Iran was not blinded because they depended on a Beidou, because they used the Chinese sat-nav system. Unfortunately, the first thing they did was to compromise the ability of the adversaries, likely the United States of America, to see. Essentially, what is my thesis? My thesis is that before the bombs started flying, before the fighter jets started taking off, before the Iranian drones and ballistic missiles started taking off and landing and taking out American gear, the sat-nav war had already been fought and won. It was fought actually between China, represented by Planet Labs and GPS. China, represented by Mizar Vision and Beidou, and the United States of America, represented by GPS and Planet Labs. And clearly, the Chinese won. Thank you very much. Until see you in the next episode, please remember to like, to comment, to share, to broadcast, and ask your questions. I will gladly take them. Thank you very much.